The space station called Varel Station hung in orbit like a bright ring over a pale blue world. Ships came and went at every hour, carrying merchants, travelers, and explorers from many different stars. It was known as the center of trade in the outer systems, a place where one could find anything if they had enough credits or courage. Inside the wide market hall, lights shimmered across metal walls, and voices from dozens of languages mixed together in a steady hum. In one corner of the market stood Rian, a human trader who had been traveling the trade routes for years. He was not rich and he did not seek glory. He traded simple goods, food supplies, and old machine parts. He had a calm face, quiet brown eyes, and a habit of watching before speaking. Many people at the station knew him as polite and fair. He preferred to observe the flow of trade and learn from others before deciding on his next step. That evening, the air inside the auction hall carried a strange energy. The large platform in the center was surrounded by traders, nobles, and collectors from many races. Shiny glass screens floated above the crowd, showing the items to be sold that night. Ryan came mostly to watch. Auctions on Varel were known for surprises. Sometimes rare technology appeared, and sometimes ancient artifacts from forgotten worlds. The auction began with energy crystals, old navigation cores, and small relics that drew light applause. The crowd was loud, excited, and full of pride as bids were shouted in different currencies. Ryan watched calmly, leaning against a railing near the back. He liked seeing how different species expressed their greed and joy. To him, it was a study of life. Then the hall lights dimmed. The next item was brought forward. A long cage rolled into view, covered with a pale fabric. The auctioneer, a tall being with 4 arms and golden skin, raised his voice for attention. Next, we present a rare find from the far edges of the Arkan Belt, a female from the species called Thalren, strong, durable, capable of surviving conditions that would harm most life forms. He pulled the cover away. The crowd went silent. Inside the cage stood a tall figure, gray-skinned and still. Her arms were folded behind her back and her head was slightly bowed. She wore a plain cloth garment torn at the edges. Her body was covered in rough scars that looked old. Her eyes were a deep shade of violet that seemed to catch the light but not reflect it. Her face carried a heavy strength but also something tired, like a story that had gone too long without being told. The auctioneer continued, trying to sound cheerful. She was found on a ruined colony site. Our scans show she is healthy, though her speech is limited. She is said to be part of a species known for endurance and great strength. Bidding starts at 100 credits. No one spoke. The room stayed quiet. A few whispers moved through the crowd. Some laughed softly. Others turned away. One voice said she looked cursed. Another said the Thalren were unpredictable. Someone else whispered that this one had been abandoned for a reason. Ryan listened not to the words but to the tone. Fear, disgust, pity. None of it came from knowledge, only from rumor. He had heard of the Thalren before long ago, but only in stories told by pilots who loved exaggeration. According to those tales, they were once a proud people who built cities of crystal, guided by harmony with their planet. Then something happened and their worlds fell silent. No one ever explained why. The auctioneer cleared his throat. 100 credits, anyone? Strong worker, adaptable, intelligent, a rare species, still no answer. The silence grew uncomfortable. The alien woman inside the cage did not move. Her eyes scanned the crowd once slowly. Ryan noticed that she did not seem frightened. Her gaze was calm and steady. She stood like someone who had already endured more than the crowd could imagine. The auctioneer's voice cracked a little. No bids? 90, 80, 50? A few heads shook. Someone muttered that she was too ugly to keep around. Another said it was bad luck to own something that no one else wanted. A nervous laugh followed, but it faded quickly. Rian felt a quiet discomfort grow inside him. The longer he watched, the more wrong it felt. He did not see a monster. He saw someone forgotten by the universe, someone who had once been great. He stepped closer, weaving through the crowd. The floor beneath his boots hummed with power from the station's engines. The lights above flickered slightly, and for a moment the reflection of the woman's face appeared on the metal surface of the railing beside him. Her expression was unreadable, but there was still a trace of dignity in the way she held her head high despite being trapped behind metal bars. The auctioneer sighed and tried again. At least one offer. Any value. She cannot stay here forever. A murmur of annoyance came from the audience. The crowd had lost interest. Most were looking at their screens or talking quietly. Then a voice spoke. "I will bid." The room went still again. The sound had come from the back. The auctioneer looked up in surprise. His golden eyes scanned the rows until he saw Ryan raising his hand. "One human bid," the auctioneer said, uncertain. "State your offer." Ryan's voice was calm. 100 credits. The starting price. A wave of whispers followed. Some people turned to stare at him. A merchant beside him laughed softly and shook his head. "Human, you must be joking. That one is a waste. She will bring trouble." Ryan only shrugged. "Maybe, maybe not." The auctioneer hesitated. "You understand, sir, there are no returns. Once the sale is complete, the responsibility is yours." "I understand." The alien woman in the cage lifted her head fully for the first time. Her violet eyes locked on Ryan's face. The light from the ceiling reflected faintly across her eyes, and something unreadable passed between them. Ryan felt a strange pull, not fear but a deep awareness, as if he were being weighed and judged silently. The auctioneer looked around once more, hoping for a higher bid, but no one spoke. He gave a small sigh. "Sold to the human. Lot 49. A mechanical arm lifted the cage and rolled it toward the back exit. The crowd began talking again, quickly forgetting what had just happened. They turned their attention back to glittering crystals and shining machines. Ryan stayed still for a moment, feeling the eyes of a few traders on him. Some looked curious, some amused, others dismissive. He paid no attention. He had done stranger things before. Curiosity was a strong force, and it had brought him luck more than once. He followed the cage down a narrow metal corridor to the transaction desk. The clerk there, a small creature with orange fur and quick hands, checked his payment and handed him a digital key. "She is officially under your care," the clerk said with a quick smile. "You sure about this, human?" "She does not speak much. Some say she bites." Ryan shook his head. "People say many things." He took the key and walked to where the cage waited near the loading bay. The large window beside it showed the endless black of space and the thin glow of distant stars. The woman stood quietly, watching that same view. Ryan pressed the release code on the digital pad. The metal bars slid open with a soft hiss. She did not move. "You are free now," Ryan said quietly, "at least from that cage. My ship is small, but it has air, food, and quiet. You can rest there if you want." She turned her head slightly, studying him. Her voice came out rough and low, almost like the sound of stone being moved. "Why did you buy me?" Ryan looked out at the stars. "Because no one else did." The woman tilted her head as if trying to understand. After a pause, she stepped out of the cage. Her movements were slow but controlled. She stood taller than Ryan by half a head. The scars on her arms caught the light, forming strange patterns. He motioned toward the docking tunnel that led to his ship. This way, they walked together in silence. The sound of their footsteps echoed in the long tunnel. Around them, the hum of the station faded as they entered the small ship named Solace. Inside, everything was plain but clean. The main cabin had 2 chairs, a table, and a screen showing nearby routes. Ryan set down the key and turned to her. "You can stay as long as you need," he said. "No one will bother you here." She looked around slowly. "You are not afraid of me?" Ryan smiled slightly. "Not yet." For the first time, a faint expression crossed her face. It might have been a hint of surprise or maybe something softer. She sat down on the floor, folding her legs. The ship's light fell over her gray skin, giving it a calm silver tone. Outside the window, stars drifted by like quiet witnesses. Ryan sat across from her, unsure what came next. He only knew one thing. The decision he made that night would change both their paths in ways neither could see yet. The small ship named Solace drifted away from Varel Station with a slow turn of its engines. The stars outside spread like silver dust against the black sky. Inside, the lights were soft and steady. Ryan sat at the main console, checking the navigation screen. Across the cabin, the alien woman he had freed sat quietly near the wall, her eyes watching the shifting light through the window. Her name, as she had told him before they left the station, was Talra. The name sounded like wind passing through a narrow stone path. Ryan had repeated it to himself until he said it correctly. She had nodded once in approval, then returned to silence. That was the last thing she had said since they departed. Ryan was used to silence. Space travel often meant long hours without company. Yet this silence felt different. It was heavy, filled with questions he did not know how to ask. He wanted to speak but did not wish to seem intrusive. She was not a servant, not a worker, and not a captive. She was simply a passenger who had nowhere else to go. He set the ship on auto course and walked to the food dispenser. He prepared 2 cups of warm broth and placed one on the small table beside her. "It is not very good," he said, "but it helps with long flights." Talra looked at the cup without moving for a while. Her hands were large and strong, the skin marked with faint silver lines that glowed slightly in the dim light. Finally, she lifted the cup and took a small sip. Her face did not change, but she finished it quietly. Rian smiled a little. "That means it is not terrible." She gave him a slow look, unsure whether he was joking. He decided not to explain. Instead, he sat down across from her. "You said you were from the Thalran. I read about your people once, but only a little. They said your world was beautiful." Her eyes turned toward the window. "It was," she said softly. "Long ago." Her voice was low but clear. It carried a rhythm that sounded almost musical. Ryan waited for her to continue, but she stayed quiet. He could sense that speaking about her home brought pain, so he did not push her. He shifted the topic. "Do you know where you want to go? I can drop you at any station or colony." Talra shook her head. "I have no world left," Ryan nodded. "Then you can stay for now. You can rest and decide later." She studied him for a moment. "Why do you help a stranger?" "Humans do not usually buy trouble." Rian looked down at his cup. "Maybe I like trouble. Or maybe I just do not like seeing someone treated as less than they are." Talra's eyes softened, but she said nothing more. She turned back to the window where the stars slid by in slow motion. The days that followed passed quietly. Talra spoke little, but she began to help around the ship. She fixed small things without being asked and organized storage compartments with a strange sense of order. Her movements were graceful, almost methodical. Rian found himself watching her work, curious about her calm focus. When she walked, her steps made almost no sound. It was as if she belonged to the silence of space itself. One evening, Rian found her in the engine room. She was examining a broken panel that he had been meaning to repair for weeks. Her long fingers traced the wiring with care. "You know how to fix that?" he asked. Talra nodded. "Your power conduit is uneven. The energy flow bends at the wrong angle. It causes friction and noise." Ryan raised an eyebrow. "You can sense that?" She glanced at him. "My kind can feel patterns of energy. It is part of what we were made for." He handed her a tool. "Then you are hired." She did not smile, but there was a faint light in her eyes as she began to work. Ryan watched quietly as she reconnected the wires with surprising precision. When she finished, the ship's hum became smoother, softer, almost musical. Ryan clapped his hands once. "Perfect. I might keep you as my engineer." Talra turned to him, her face calm. "You speak lightly, but you mean kindness." "That is rare," Ryan shrugged. "Maybe. But kindness costs less than cruelty." After that, the silence between them became more comfortable. They began to share short talks about their travels. Ryan told her stories of human colonies on distant moons, of storms that painted the sky in colors, and of markets that floated in the upper clouds. Talra listened quietly, sometimes asking small questions. Her curiosity seemed to awaken again. One night, as they crossed the edge of the Oran Belt, Ryan noticed a faint sadness in her tone when she spoke of her past. She told him her people once lived in harmony with energy from their planet's core. They were not warriors or conquerors, but builders of light and sound. They believed every being had a purpose. But then their leaders grew greedy. They tried to control the natural energy for power, and the harmony was broken. The planet grew unstable and many were lost. Those who survived scattered across the stars, hiding their identity. Rian listened with quiet respect. "You were punished for something you did not do." Talra looked down. "I spoke against the rulers. They marked me as flawed. That is why they sent me away. When others saw my scars, they believed the lies." Ryan's heart felt heavy. Then they lost one of their wisest voices. She gave a faint sound, almost like a sigh. "Wisdom means little when no one listens." Ryan leaned back in his chair. "Then maybe now someone finally will." Her eyes met his again. There was no smile, but there was warmth, a slow recognition of trust. For the first time, she seemed to relax. That night, she slept in one of the spare quarters, and for the first time in years, she dreamed of her world without fear. Days passed, and the Solace continued its quiet journey. Ryan taught her small things about the ship. She learned fast. She even started helping with trade logs, recording supplies and routes. Her handwriting was smooth and strange, shaped like patterns of waves. When they stopped at a small refueling outpost, Ryan noticed other traders staring at them. Humans were common there, but a Thalran was not. Some whispered, just like at the auction. Talra stayed near the ship, silent but calm. Ryan ignored the stares. He bought supplies, refilled energy cells, and returned quickly. As they left the outpost, he noticed her sitting near the main window again. Her hands were resting on her knees and her gaze was far away. "They still look at me as if I am less," she said quietly. Ryan sat beside her. "Let them look. They do not know what they see." She turned to him. "And you do?" He nodded. "I see someone strong enough to stand alone when everyone else turned away." For a moment, her expression softened again. "You speak with belief." "I do," he said simply. From that day, something began to shift between them. It was not friendship yet, but understanding. She started to ask about Earth and about what humans believed in. Ryan told her about music, about stories that taught courage, about small acts of hope that built great things. She listened closely. Once she even said she wished she could hear human music, so Ryan played an old recording of a violin through the ship's speakers. The sound filled the cabin, gentle and full of emotion. Talra closed her eyes and sat still, letting the music wash over her. When it ended, she opened her eyes slowly. "That sound carries both sorrow and peace," she said. "It reminds me of the wind on my world." Ryan smiled. "That is music for you. It tells what words cannot." Talra nodded. Maybe humans understand more than they know. Their days became a rhythm of small tasks and quiet companionship. Ryan noticed that the ship seemed brighter somehow, though he had changed nothing. Perhaps it was Talra's energy sense keeping everything in balance. Or perhaps it was simply the peace that came from having purpose again. One morning, Ryan woke early and found her on the observation deck, standing before the wide window. The light from a nearby sun shone across her face, revealing the fine details of her scars. They no longer looked like marks of shame, but lines of strength like rivers carved into stone. She noticed him watching. "You stare too long," she said. He smiled. "Just thinking." "About what?" "About how strange it is," he said, "that sometimes the things others call ugly hold the most meaning." Talra looked at him for a long time, and something unreadable passed across her face again. Then she turned back to the stars. "Humans have strange eyes. You see things others refuse to see. Maybe that is our curse," Ryan said. "Or maybe it is our gift." She was silent, but her faint nod told him she understood. That night, as they drifted through the quiet reaches of space, Ryan thought back to the auction hall. He remembered the whispers, the laughter, the fear, and he remembered his hand raising before he even decided. Now, as he looked across the cabin at Talra resting peacefully, he felt certain he had made the right choice. He did not yet know what future awaited them, but he knew one thing. The journey had already begun to change them both. Outside, the stars glowed softly, as if watching over their silent ship moving toward an unseen destiny. The small ship Solace sailed through quiet space. The hum of its engines filled the air like a low song. Inside, Ryan and Talra had settled into a calm rhythm. They shared small tasks, small meals, and small words that began to build trust. It had been several weeks since Ryan first raised his hand at the auction, and the journey had already changed both of them. Ryan often worked on trade reports while Talra maintained the ship's systems. She had a strange talent for feeling when something was wrong. She could sense the smallest imbalance in the energy flow and fix it before it caused trouble. Sometimes Ryan watched her work and wondered what kind of world had shaped such skill. One morning, Ryan woke early to find Talra standing in the main cabin, her hands placed gently on the metal wall. Her eyes were closed. A faint silver light moved along her fingers and then faded. "What are you doing?" Ryan asked quietly. Talra opened her eyes. "Listening? To what?" "The ship," she said. "It speaks in its own way. Machines are alive in their patterns. They remember touch, energy, and sound." Ryan smiled. "I suppose that makes you the ship's friend?" She tilted her head slightly. "Perhaps." He walked to the control console and checked the screen. "We will reach the Varan Drift in 2 days. There is a trade post there. We can sell our cargo and maybe find better work." Talra nodded. "I will prepare the ship for docking." As she turned away, Ryan noticed again the calm way she moved, as if every step had purpose. There was strength in her stillness. He realized that her silence was not emptiness but patience. Later that day, they shared a meal in the small kitchen area. Ryan placed 2 plates of grain stew on the table. Talra sat across from him. The warm smell of spices filled the air. Ryan had learned that she ate little but appreciated food that reminded her of earth and roots. "Do you ever miss your world?" Ryan asked carefully. She looked down at her plate. "Every day. What was it like?" She paused for a long time before answering. It was full of light. The ground shone in colors when the sun touched it. The air was warm and thick with sound. "We built our homes from crystal stone. They grew from the ground and changed shape with the wind. We believed that harmony kept everything alive." Her voice was calm but distant, as if she were speaking to something far away. Rian listened quietly. "It sounds beautiful." "It was," she said. "Until the leaders tried to command the light. They wanted more power than the planet could give. The balance broke. The energy that once healed began to destroy. Our world cracked, many fled. Some stayed and vanished with the storms." Ryan felt a weight in his chest. "And you?" Talra looked at him. "I spoke against them. I told them to stop. They marked me as broken. They called me a danger. When the storms came, they left me behind." Her voice stayed steady, but her eyes dimmed. Ryan wanted to say something, but no words seemed enough. Finally, he said softly, "They were wrong." Talra gave a slow nod. "Perhaps. But once a story is told, it becomes truth to those who wish to believe it." Rian leaned back in his chair. "Then maybe it is time for a new story." She met his eyes for a moment, then looked away. "Humans speak with hope. That is your strength," he smiled slightly. "Maybe it is foolishness." "Sometimes foolishness keeps the stars bright," she said quietly. Her words stayed in Ryan's mind long after the meal ended. Over the next few days, they continued their flight toward the Varen Drift. The stars outside changed color as they entered a region filled with dust and soft glowing clouds. Ryan noticed the ship's sensors flickering. "Radiation is rising," he said. "We will need to fly carefully." Talra walked to the console and placed her hand on it. "The energy fields here are not stable. I can guide us through," Rian frowned. "You can do that?" She nodded. "It is part of what my kind once did. We read the flow of space like others read the wind." He trusted her. She closed her eyes, and the light from the control screens reflected softly across her skin. Her hands moved slowly over the navigation panel. The ship turned, following paths invisible to human sight. The sensors calmed. The engines steadied. The glowing clouds outside seemed to part for them. Ryan watched in silence. It was like watching someone dance with the universe. When they were clear of the drift, Talra opened her eyes again. "We are safe." Rian looked at the screen. "Perfect navigation. You saved us from getting trapped." She looked at him, her expression calm. "You believed in me. I could not let your belief be wasted." He felt a small warmth in his chest. "Then I should believe more often." She gave the faintest smile, so quick that he almost missed it. That night, they shared another quiet meal. Ryan played soft music again. This time, Talra asked what the song was about. "It is called Rise of the Morning Star," he said. "It tells the story of someone who lost everything and still found the courage to start again." Talra's eyes moved toward the window where stars glowed faintly. "That is a story I understand," Ryan nodded. "It suits you." Later, while Ryan was checking the cargo bay, he found a small metal piece shaped like a spiral lying on the floor. It glowed faintly in the dark. When he picked it up, it felt warm. He brought it to Talra. "Is this yours?" She took it gently. "Yes, it is a piece of my home. We made these to remember the harmony." Each spiral held the sound of our world. Rian watched as she placed it against the wall. A faint tone filled the air, soft and peaceful. It was like the sound of wind mixed with water. The sound made the small ship feel alive. "It is beautiful," he said. "It reminds me that not all things are lost," she replied. They sat in silence, listening to the gentle tone. In that moment, the distance between their worlds seemed smaller. Days later, they reached the Varen Drift Station. It was a large floating structure surrounded by glowing mist. Ships came and went carrying traders from many species. Ryan docked the Solace and began his trade business. He sold a few crates of old tech parts and bought new supplies. While he worked, Talra stayed aboard the ship, keeping to herself. When Ryan returned, he found her in the control room again, staring at the spiral piece on the wall. Did everything go well? She asked. Yes, he said. But the traders here are strange. They kept asking about you. Her head turned slightly. What did you tell them? That you are my friend, he said simply. Talra looked surprised. Friend? Yes, he said with a small smile. I do not see any other word that fits. For a long time she said nothing. Then she nodded slowly. Friend, she repeated as if testing the sound. It has been a long time since I heard that word meant for me. Ryan's smile deepened. Then it is about time. That night the station lights glowed outside the window. Talra stood by the glass watching the ships pass. Ryan joined her. You could leave here if you wanted, he said. Start somewhere new. She shook her head. Not yet. There is something I must understand first. What is that? She looked at him. Why you raised your hand that day? You did not know me. You risked your credits and your peace for a stranger. Why? Ryan looked out at the stars. Because everyone else looked away. And I could not. She studied him for a moment. Humans are strange. You find meaning where others see nothing. Maybe that is what makes us human, he said. She nodded again, her eyes soft. Then perhaps your kind will bring light where others have lost it. As the station's glow faded in the distance, the Solace moved once again into open space. The stars stretched ahead, endless and quiet. Talra returned to her post near the engine, while Ryan guided the ship toward the next route. In the calm hum of flight, they both felt a quiet change inside. Trust had taken root, and with it came something even stronger, hope. Talra no longer seemed like a lost stranger, and Ryan no longer felt like a lonely traveler. They were two souls crossing the same endless sky, carrying stories that had finally begun to heal. Outside, the stars burned brighter, as if the universe itself was watching and waiting for what came next. The Solace glided through the empty reaches of space, its engines humming like a quiet river. Beyond the thick glass windows, stars stretched endlessly, some shining brighter than others. Ryan sat at the console, his hands resting lightly on the controls, while Talra leaned against a wall near the observation window. The silence was not heavy anymore. It was comfortable, almost like a companion in its own right. Ryan glanced at Talra. You have been quiet today. Thinking? She did not answer immediately. Her violet eyes traced patterns in the starlight, as if she could read meanings in their brightness. The stars speak, she said softly. Not to everyone, but to those who listen. Ryan tilted his head. And what do they say to you? They warn, she replied, of disturbances. Of changes. Of what comes next, Ryan frowned. Disturbances? What kind? Her gaze met his, calm and unwavering. Energy in the nearby sectors is rising. Unstable currents. Ships pass through and vanish if they do not follow the path of balance. Ryan leaned back in his chair. You mean we might have trouble? Talra shook her head. Not trouble. Opportunity. If we navigate carefully, we can learn what others cannot. Ryan studied her for a long moment. There was a quiet confidence in her tone that was hard to ignore. Then lead the way, he said simply. For the next several hours, Talra moved through the control room with careful precision. Her hands hovered over the navigation panels as if she could feel the currents of energy surrounding the ship. The sensors flickered slightly, and Ryan noticed the readings becoming smoother. It was as though the ship itself was responding to her presence. Ryan watched, fascinated. How are you doing this? I feel the energy, she said. It flows like water. It bends and turns. If we move with it, we pass safely. If we resist, we risk being lost. Ryan nodded, trusting her instincts. The Solace shifted its course slightly, following the invisible paths she seemed to sense. The stars outside shimmered differently now, as if the universe itself acknowledged their careful passage. Suddenly, a soft vibration ran through the ship. The sensors blinked rapidly, showing a pocket of unstable energy ahead. Ryan's hands moved to the controls instinctively. We are approaching it faster than expected. Adjusting course will be difficult. Talra's hands moved over the panels with calm certainty. Follow me. Do not resist, Ryan obeyed. He felt the ship sway gently as she guided them through the shifting energy. The instruments hummed in rhythm with her movements. It was a strange, almost musical sensation, like the ship and Talra were moving together as one. Minutes passed, though it felt like hours. Finally, the readings steadied. The Solace floated into a calm pocket of space, the stars once again shining steadily. Ryan let out a long breath. I do not know how to thank you, Talra gave a faint smile. Do not, you believed in me. That is enough. Ryan leaned back in his chair, feeling a mix of awe and relief. He had seen skilled pilots before, but this was different. Talra's abilities were not just skill. They were part of who she was. Her species had been built to feel patterns in energy, to understand the universe in ways others could not. And now she shared that gift with him. As the Solace continued its journey, Ryan realized something important. He had bought Talra because he believed no one else would. Yet now he saw that she was not just a passenger. She was a guide, a teacher, and perhaps the key to navigating challenges that no ordinary human could manage. The next morning, they approached a region known as the Lumina Fields, where floating energy clusters created beautiful but dangerous light patterns. Traders avoided this sector because it was unpredictable, yet valuable resources floated within. Ryan prepared the ship cautiously. This is our first real test beyond simple navigation, he said. Talra nodded. It is also an opportunity to learn. Observe carefully, Ryan, not everything is as it seems. The Solace entered the field slowly. Bright glows shimmered around them, casting shadows that danced across the cabin. Sensors blared softly as the energy clusters shifted. Talra placed her hand on the main console, her eyes closed. The soft light reflected in her silver-gray skin, making her appear almost luminous. Follow my guidance, she instructed. Do not act before I do. Ryan nodded, gripping the controls lightly. He noticed the difference immediately. Talra moved her hands in subtle gestures. The ship responded, gliding through the field with grace. Energy clusters that would have shattered the hull if touched now seemed to part around them. You are incredible, Ryan said, his voice full of admiration. She opened her eyes, calm and composed. I am merely listening. Hours passed as they navigated deeper into the Lumina Fields. Every turn and twist required patience and attention. Ryan learned quickly to trust her instincts. He began to understand how she perceived the unseen currents of energy. There was a quiet elegance to the way she worked, a harmony between her and the universe that Ryan could feel even without understanding fully. Finally, they emerged from the fields into a quiet stretch of space. The stars outside were calm and the Solace floated smoothly. Ryan let out a long breath of relief and turned to Talra. We made it. She nodded, serene. The path is not always visible, but it is there. We only need to learn how to feel it. Ryan smiled. Then maybe humans can learn more than we know. Talra studied him. Perhaps. But you already have one gift humans often forget. You believe. Ryan's chest warmed at her words. I believe in people, he said softly. For the rest of the day, they repaired small parts of the ship and rested. Ryan noticed that Talra seemed to grow more confident with every task. Her voice was no longer cautious and her hands moved more naturally over the panels. She even began offering suggestions on improvements he had not considered. Later, as they shared a simple meal, Talra finally asked something he had been waiting for. Ryan, why did you truly raise your hand at the auction? He looked at her, recalling the crowded hall, the whispers, and the fear. Because no one else did. Because someone had to. She studied him quietly. That is a rare kind of courage. Not just physical, but of the heart, Ryan shrugged. I suppose so. But I only acted because it was right. Talra nodded slowly. Then perhaps there is hope for more than just you. Ryan smiled, feeling a quiet joy. He realized that their journey was no longer just about traveling through space. It was about trust, understanding, and learning from one another. Talra had been abandoned, judged, and forgotten. Yet here she was, sharing her knowledge and guiding them safely through dangers that no one else dared face. That night, Ryan stayed awake for a long time, staring out at the stars. He thought of the auction hall, the voices that had laughed and whispered, and the way Talra had simply stood in silence. He realized that everyone had blind spots, and often they feared what they did not understand. But he also realized that courage was simple. It was seeing what others ignored and choosing to act. He had done that once. Now he understood that Talra's courage was even greater. She had survived alone for years, trusted a stranger, and now shared her extraordinary gift with him. In the quiet of the ship, he felt a shift. Something deeper had awakened in both of them. It was not just trust or skill. It was understanding. They were no longer just a human and an alien traveling together. They were companions in the truest sense, learning from each other, building something stronger than fear, stronger than isolation. By the time the Solace drifted to the edge of the Lumina fields, Ryan and Talra were no longer strangers. Their partnership had grown quietly, steadily, like the careful patterns of energy Talra guided them through. And in that partnership, both of them felt something that neither had expected, a sense of purpose. Outside, the stars shone brighter than ever, reflecting the small awakening within the Solace. Inside, Rian and Talra prepared for the next leg of their journey, ready to face whatever the universe might place before them, together. The stars, the ship, and the quiet hum of engines seemed to agree. Change was coming, and they were ready. The Solace glided through open space, its engines humming softly like a gentle river. Stars stretched endlessly in all directions, a quiet tapestry of light and dark. Inside the small cabin, Rian and Talra worked together with ease, their partnership having grown steadily over weeks of travel. Every task on the ship was no longer just an obligation. It was an opportunity to learn from one another. Rian checked the navigation panel as Talra adjusted the energy flow through the engines. "We are approaching the border of the Kelran expanse," he said. "Beyond this we may find new trade routes and opportunities." Talra nodded, her violet eyes reflecting the soft glow of the console lights. "The currents there are strong. Many ships avoid it, but the risk carries reward." Ryan smiled faintly. "Then we will take the path others avoid." "It seems to suit us." She turned her head slightly. "Yes, we have already learned that what others fear may hold the greatest value." The next day, as they drifted closer to the expanse, a distant signal appeared on the ship's sensors. It was faint, almost imperceptible, but Talra noticed it immediately. She pressed a hand against the console, feeling the vibrations of energy that Ryan could not detect. "A vessel is nearby. Its energy is unusual. It is trapped in the currents." Ryan studied the readings. "Trapped? That is dangerous." Talra shook her head. "Danger is only a word. Opportunity is in what can be learned. If we move carefully, we may help and gain knowledge." Ryan's eyes met hers. He trusted her instincts completely now. "Prepare the ship. We will go slowly and follow your guidance." For hours, Talra led the Solace through shifting energy currents. Bright streaks of light flashed past the windows, some glowing with soft blues, others with faint gold. The trapped vessel appeared at last, a small ship caught in a cluster of unstable energy. It drifted helplessly, its systems fluctuating with the currents. Rian's hands rested lightly on the controls as Talra guided them close. "We need to secure it," she said. "I can stabilize the currents around it while you prepare a connection." He nodded. Using the ship's grappling system, Ryan carefully anchored a tether to the smaller vessel. Talra's hands moved over the console, her senses guiding the Solace and the trapped ship through the dangerous currents. Slowly, steadily, the smaller vessel began to move with them rather than against them. Minutes passed, each one tense yet controlled. Ryan could see the relief on the faces inside the trapped ship as their movement stabilized. Talra's skill had turned an impossible situation into a quiet triumph. Once the smaller vessel was safe, Ryan contacted them through the ship's communication system. "You are free now. Follow our path and you will clear the current safely," a young voice replied. "Thank you. We could not have managed without you." Ryan glanced at Talra. "You are incredible," he said softly. She shook her head gently. "I only listened." The current spoke. The rescued crew waved from their ship before moving away, leaving the Solace to continue its journey. Ryan felt a quiet pride. Their actions had not only helped another ship but also proven that patience, understanding, and trust could achieve more than fear or power alone. Later, as the stars settled into a quiet pattern, Rian and Talra shared a simple meal. The soft hum of the ship and the distant glimmer of starlight outside made the cabin feel peaceful. Rian looked across at Talra, remembering the day he had raised his hand at the auction, the moment that had changed everything. "You know," he said, "most people laughed that day. They called you cursed, ugly, worthless. I thought then that they were blind." Talra studied him for a moment. "You believed in me without knowing me. That is a rare gift, Rian." He smiled faintly. "It was not a gift. It was a choice. One choice can change many lives." Her eyes softened. "Perhaps. And yet it changed more than just our lives. It has shifted the balance of what others may see as impossible." Ryan nodded. "Yes, that is why I think we can do more." Not just survive, but change things for the better. The following days brought them to a quiet trading post on the edge of the expanse. Ryan sold cargo and bought supplies while Talra explored the ship's storage and systems. Word had spread quietly about their journey, and a few traders whispered about the strange human and his unusual companion. But no one dared approach closely. Instead, they observed, waiting to see what might happen next. Ryan returned from the market with small parcels of food and tools. He noticed Talra examining a display of small energy devices. "You understand these?" he asked. She nodded. "I understand patterns. Each device is built to harmonize with energy. If used incorrectly, it fails. If used carefully, it can work beyond expectation." Ryan smiled. "Then you may teach me." Over the next several days, they worked together on the ship. Talra taught him how to feel energy currents in ways he had never imagined. They adjusted the engines, fine-tuned the navigation systems, and even repaired old components that had long been neglected. Ryan realized that her knowledge and instincts were extraordinary. The solace itself seemed to respond to her presence, flowing more smoothly and efficiently through space. One evening, as they drifted near a quiet nebula, Ryan noticed Talra standing at the observation window, her hands resting lightly on the glass. She looked out at the swirling colors of the gas clouds, her expression distant yet calm. "You have changed so much since we began this journey," Ryan said quietly. She turned her head slowly. "And you as well. You see what others ignore. You act when others hesitate. It is rare for humans to have such patience and understanding." Ryan chuckled softly. "Perhaps it is just experience. Or maybe I have learned from you." She gave a small nod. "Then we have both grown." The nebula glowed softly outside, reflecting on the glass and the silver-gray patterns on Talra's skin. The light made her appear almost ethereal, like a being shaped by the stars themselves. Ryan watched her for a long moment, realizing that the world could be brighter when one saw the hidden strength in others. The next day, they received a transmission from a distant colony. The colony was struggling to stabilize its energy grids, and the message asked for guidance. Ryan and Talra studied the problem together. Using her abilities, Talra guided the necessary adjustments. The colony's systems returned to balance, and the grateful message they received afterward expressed admiration for the strange human and the remarkable alien who had helped them. Ryan looked at Talra with pride. "You have done more than just survive. You are helping others," she smiled faintly. "I am beginning to understand that survival is only part of life. To create, to teach, and to guide is the greater purpose." As the Solace continued its journey, they encountered more opportunities to help and explore. Each time, Talra's knowledge and intuition brought solutions that others could not see. Ryan realized that the universe itself seemed to respond to their collaboration, opening paths where others would have found obstacles. Months passed, and word of the human and the Thalran woman spread quietly among traders and travelers. Many began to admire their courage and skill. No longer was Talra seen as cursed or undesirable. Instead, she was recognized for her wisdom, her abilities, and her quiet strength. One evening, Ryan and Talra returned to Varel Station, the place where it had all begun. Traders and onlookers paused as they passed. The same whispers that had once called her cursed now turned to admiration. Ryan could see the astonishment in their eyes as they realized the truth of her abilities and character. At a public market, Ryan and Talra demonstrated the skills that had kept them safe and guided others. The crowd watched in awe as the Solace maneuvered through a demonstration course of floating energy fields, all guided by Talra's instincts and Ryan's steady hands. A young trader approached Ryan. "Why did you bid on her that day?" Ryan smiled, glancing at Talra. "Because no one else saw her." The crowd fell silent for a moment, then murmurs of approval began to rise. They understood finally what he had seen, a being of strength, wisdom, and courage that had been hidden by fear and rumor. Talra stood beside him, calm and dignified. For the first time in years, she felt recognized not for her appearance or her scars, but for her true self. She looked at Ryan, her eyes reflecting the quiet light of the station. "You made a choice that changed more than your own life," she said softly. Ryan shrugged lightly. Sometimes all it takes is a hand raised at the right moment. The station lights glowed brighter that night. Traders and travelers moved about carrying goods, laughter, and stories. Rian and Talra walked side by side through the market, no longer strangers, no longer judged by fear. Their journey had proven that courage, patience, and belief in others could transform not just one life, but many.